My wife mocked my family while I covered all expenses, so I walked away, leaving her to face everything alone she once controlled. I'm a 33-year-old guy, and I used to think that love meant carrying the weight together if one person had to carry more for a while. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment with peeling paint, secondhand furniture, and parents who never let us go to bed hungry even when it meant skipping their own meals. That kind of upbringing carves something into you. I worked for everything I had. By 26, I had a steady job in project management, a modest home, and enough savings to breathe a little. I was proud of that. Then I met Jenna. She was magnetic smart, beautiful, with a quiet kind of confidence that made people lean in when she spoke. She came from money, but she never rubbed it in. In fact, the first time I told her about my background, she said, "I love how grounded you are. You're not like all the guys I know." When we got married, she moved into my house, and I told her she didn't need to worry about money. I wanted her to feel safe. She left her job, said it was just something to do after college anyway, and took over the house stuff. Groceries, decor, errands. Nothing big. I paid for the mortgage, both cars, utilities, her subscriptions, salon visits, clothes, gifts for her family. All of it. She always thanked me, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "You're the reason I get to breathe easy." I wore that like a badge of honor. I thought that was love, being the one she could lean on. But for years in, I started to realize something that made my stomach twist. Jenna hadn't just leaned on me. She had never stood on her own at all, and the more I looked at it, the more I saw just how comfortable she'd become letting me hold everything, alone. The first time. Jenna made a comment about my family. It was during a brunch she hosted for her friends. My mom had knitted us a throw blanket for the living room, and one of Jenna's friends complimented it. Jenna laughed and said, "Oh, that. It's cute in a humble beginnings kind of way." Everyone chuckled. I smiled, but something in me tightened. Later that night, I brought it up. I said it wasn't really fair to poke fun at something my mom made with love. Jenna tilted her head and said, "Relax. It was a joke. People love the rags to riches. Aesthetic cure, the proof it works." I let it go. Maybe I was being too sensitive. I'd always been protective of my family, and maybe I needed to lighten up, but then it kept happening. She started calling my sister's job as a school nurse cute. When my dad retired and sent us a heartfelt letter, Jenna rolled her eyes and said, "Your dad really needs to stop writing like he's narrating a war memoir." It wasn't just teasing anymore. It was condescension wrapped in passive-aggressive charm at one point. I asked her why we never invited my family to her dinner parties. She said, "I just don't want them to feel uncomfortable. It's a different crowd." What she meant was they don't fit. And what hurt the most? I didn't push back. I told myself maybe she was right. Maybe I was trying too hard to blend two worlds that were never meant to mix. But in my gut, I felt it a wedge forming. Not between my family and me, but between who I was. And who I was slowly becoming in her world. And I didn't like the man. I saw in the mirror when I smiled and stayed quiet. Publicly. Jenna still acted like the doting wife smiling at events, gripping my arm when we walked into restaurants, calling me her rock when others were listening. But in private, the tone was shifting. Slowly, steadily, her praise started to feel more like performance. At home, it was all corrections, comparisons, and critiques. She started commenting on my clothes, telling me my style was dated and that I needed to dress like someone who actually makes 6 figures. When I laughed it off, she snapped. "You think it's funny looking like you just stepped out of a clearance rack? I'm the one who has to be seen with you." The words hit harder than they should have. Not because of what she said, but because I believed her for a moment. One night, I was fixing a leak under the kitchen sink when she walked in wearing a new designer dress I hadn't seen before. "Can you not get water everywhere?" She sighed. "I just cleaned the floor. And by the way, you'll need to move some money. I ordered new pendant lights." I asked how much. She shrugged. "Only $900. It's called ambience. Look it up." That same week, when my car started acting up, she joked, "You and your broke jeans. Everything you own falls apart." I didn't laugh. I just stood there, wrench still in hand, staring at her like I didn't recognize her. I started writing things down not to make a case, but to remind myself I wasn't crazy. The words, the tone, the shift, because it was becoming clear. The woman who once said she admired my values didn't just stop respecting where I came from. She started resenting it, and I was beginning to wonder if she ever meant any of it to begin with. Jenna always cared about appearances, how things looked, what people thought, the image we projected. I used to think it was just a preference, like someone who enjoys neat shelves and matching towels. But one night I realized it was deeper than that. It wasn't about looking good. It was about looking better than everyone else. Especially me. We were out at a dinner party hosted by one of her high-end friends. Everyone there was dressed like they stepped out of a magazine. I wore a simple button-down and blazer, the nicest thing I owned. Midway through the night, someone complimented Jenna's earrings, and she laughed. "Thanks!" I had to upgrade my taste after marrying into humble beginnings. She said it with a smile, like it was cute. But every eye turned to me. Some chuckled. Others gave me that pity-laced smirk. I felt my face flush, but I swallowed it. I stared at the glass in my hand, held it tighter than I should have. On the drive home, the silence was thick. I asked her, "What was that about?" She scoffed. "Oh, please don't be dramatic. It's not my fault if you're insecure." She didn't even look at me when she said it. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not because we fought, but because I didn't feel welcome in my own bed. I stared at the ceiling and tried to pinpoint the moment, stopped being her husband, and became her prop, something she displayed when it helped her image, and dismissed when it didn't. The worst part, I still loved her. Or maybe I loved the version of her that only existed in the beginning. Either way, I knew something was shifting. And deep down, I feared that if I didn't draw a line soon, I'd lose the last pieces of myself I still recognized. My mother had always been gentle. She never asked for anything, never complained. When I told her I wanted to host a quiet lunch at our place, just her, my sister, Jenna, and Mishi, lit up like I'd handed her the moon. "I'll bring that chicken casserole you love," she said, "and I knitted something new for your sofa." I told her she didn't have to, but I could hear how proud she was through the phone. Jenna wasn't thrilled. "A weekday lunch? Do they not have jobs?" she muttered while cleaning. I bit my tongue, told myself she was just stressed. But when my mom and sister arrived, Jenna barely looked up from her phone. She greeted them like a store clerk, saying hello to someone who clearly couldn't afford anything. Lunch was awkward. Jenna criticized the casserole for being too salty and moved the knitted blanket off the couch because it clashed with the color palette. My mom just smiled and quietly folded it on her lap. My sister's jaw clenched, but she said nothing until later. After they left, I got a text. "She doesn't like us." She never did. You don't have to keep pretending. I stared at that message for a long time. That evening, I confronted Jenna. I told her she crossed a line, that my mother deserved respect in her own son's home. Jenna rolled her eyes. "Your family is sweet, sure, but let's be honest, they're not us." I'm tired of pretending they matter. Those words, they gutted me. I thought about everything: my mom selling her jewelry to help with my college tuition, my sister co-signing my first car loan, all the ways they showed up when I had nothing. And now, I'd brought them into a house where they weren't welcome. I didn't say anything else that night. I just sat there, staring at Jenna, wondering how long I'd been sleeping next to someone who looked down on the very people who raised me. After that lunch, something inside me went quiet. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just detached. I stopped trying to explain why her words cut so deep, stopped justifying my family's worth. Instead, I watched. I paid attention. And that's when things started to fall into place in a way I hadn't expected. I noticed Jenna getting more secretive with her laptop, more defensive about bank notifications. We'd always had shared accounts, but she handled most of the day-to-day bills. I trusted her. Until one night, I woke up to her on her phone at 2 a.m., whispering and quickly hiding the screen when she saw me stir. I didn't say anything. But the next day, I called the bank. What I found made my hands go cold. Jenna had a separate savings account. One I never knew existed. And it wasn't small over $45,000. Most of it had been transferred slowly, small amounts, over the past 2 years from our joint funds. She labeled the transfers as investment reserves and future planning. I printed the records, stared at them on the table for hours, trying to wrap my head around it. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. In fact, she smirked. "Every smart woman has an escape plan," she said. "I just didn't think you'd be the one to catch it." No remorse. No shame. Just calculation. And that's when the shift happened. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I looked at her, really looked, and realized the woman I married didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did. From that moment, I stopped trying to fix us. I stopped being her foundation and started quietly, planning my own escape. Because if she had a secret plan, then so would I. After I found out about Jenna's secret savings, something inside me shut off, but not in a broken way. More like a light switch. I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear, focused. I moved through the house like a guest, polite and distant, careful not to raise suspicions. Because if she wanted to play the long game, she had no idea who she was up against now. First, I opened my own private bank account and slowly rerouted my direct deposit. A few $100s here, a bonus check there. I stopped using the joint credit card altogether. When Jenna noticed, I told her I was experimenting with budgeting apps. She barely blinked. I started working late, not because I had to, but because I needed space to breathe, to think without her voice in my ear. I contacted a lawyer, quietly began documenting every financial transaction, every insult, every moment of emotional manipulation. My phone's photo album turned into a secret archive. Weekends, I spent more time with my sister. I helped her set up a nursery. She was pregnant with her first stand every time I held a hammer or moved a shelf. I felt a small piece of myself come back. She never asked what was going on, but she knew. Her eyes told me she was waiting for me to say something. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Back at home, Jenna started noticing the distance. "You've been cold lately," she said one night, folding laundry she had never touched before. "You okay?" I nodded. "Just tired." She kissed me, but it felt hollow. Like habit. Like she was trying to keep control without realizing she'd already lost it. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, repeating one sentence over and over. Start slow. Stay quiet. Leave nothing behind but the mess she built herself. 2 weeks later, my mom ended up in the hospital. Mild heart complications. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but serious enough to shake me. I dropped everything and drove straight there. Stayed the night by her side in that cold, overly white room, watching her chest rise and fall as machines beeped steadily around us. She was pale but smiling, telling me not to worry. That's the kind of woman. She's always been brave, even when she shouldn't have to be. I called Jenna to let her know I'd be staying at the hospital for a couple days. Her reply: "Okay, but don't forget to schedule the gutter cleaning. They come Wednesday, no concern." "No, how's your mom?" Just a reminder about her curated little world. I ignored the pit in my stomach and stayed 2 more nights with my mom. When I finally got home, I found the house spotless, sterile even. Jenna had cleaned, rearranged the living room, tossed out clutter, she called it. And that's when I noticed it. The blanket my mom had made, the one she'd gifted us during that awkward lunch. Gone. I asked her where it was. Jenna didn't even look up from her magazine. It was old and didn't match the decor. I donated it. I just stood there. That blanket wasn't just fabric. It was her hands, her love, her time. It was the last thing she made before the hospital. I walked into the guest room, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the bed in silence. I didn't cry. I couldn't. My chest felt like a black hole, not from heartbreak, but from the sharp realization that I had no one in this house. No warmth, no softness, no home. And that night, for the first time, I didn't fall asleep wondering if I could save the marriage. I fell asleep wondering how fast I could get out without ever looking back. That weekend, Jenna went out of town for a retreat with her friends, an elaborate spa and wine thing she'd been planning for months. I didn't hesitate. I moved quietly, calmly, like I was already a ghost in the house I had built with my hands. I packed my essentials, my work stuff, my clothes, a few sentimental items from my childhood. Everything else left behind. Every memory she had tried to twist or manipulate, I left her with it. I canceled all shared cards, froze joint accounts, and made sure our mortgage was up to date. She wouldn't be able to claim anything. Not the house, not the bills, not even the luxurious lifestyle she thought she could keep running without me. I even left a note on the kitchen counter. You wanted control. Now you can have it, alone. No apologies, just truth. The drive to my new apartment felt surreal. No sense of urgency, no panic, just quiet liberation. The city lights passed, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The apartment was small, modest, but it was mine. Every corner whispered freedom. The air smelled faintly of fresh paint and new beginnings. I unpacked slowly, savoring the sound of each box opening, each item reclaiming its place. Jenna called twice while I was settling in. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Her messages were filled with anger, blame, and disbelief. "How could you leave me like this?" she wrote. "You can't just abandon everything we built." I smiled faintly, staring at the city skyline. Everything she had built? It was built on me. And now, she had to face the consequences. That night, lying on my own bed, I realized something I hadn't let myself admit before. I wasn't running away. I was finally stepping into the life I deserved, and somewhere deep in me, I knew this was just the beginning. The next few weeks were surreal. Jenna returned home to a house she no longer had control over. The cleaners she hired quit. The luxury subscriptions she managed stopped automatically because the accounts were frozen. Friends who once admired her disappeared when they realized the lifestyle she flaunted couldn't sustain itself. Her carefully curated image. Crumbling, then came the legal side. My lawyer laid everything out clearly. All the bills I had paid. All the financial contributions I made. All the evidence of her secret savings. The court documents practically screamed the truth. She had no claim to spousal support, not a single dime. And when her hidden account was revealed, she looked manipulative, petty, and cold. It was a shock to everyone who had once envied her life. Her family quietly distanced themselves, whispering behind her back. Even some of her friends hinted that they'd always suspected she had a cruel streak. The reality hit her like a tidal wave. Everything she had relied on me to manage was now hers to handle alone. Utilities, bills, household maintenance, all of it. And suddenly, for the first time, she was vulnerable. I stayed out of her life, quietly watching from a distance. It was strangely satisfying to see her scramble in ways I had for years. Not out of malice, but as a lesson in consequences. The woman who mocked my family and belittled everything I built had no one to lean on anymore. For the first time, I realized that leaving wasn't just about escaping her. It was about letting her face the world she had tried to control. And as I watched her struggle, a calm settled over me. Justice, quiet and inevitable, had finally arrived. Life after leaving Jenna felt strange at first. The apartment was smaller than what we'd lived in together. The furniture mismatched, the walls bare, but it was mine. Every sound, every corner, reminded me that I had made this space, this life, for myself. I didn't have anyone's expectations to meet, no one's judgment lingering in the corners. It was peaceful in a way I hadn't known for years. I reconnected with my sister and helped her care for her newborn. Weekend mornings filled with soft cries and baby giggles felt more grounding than any luxury Jenna had ever demanded. I cooked meals I liked, played music I hadn't heard in years, and laughed at things I forgot I enjoyed. Therapy helped me untangle the guilt and shame I had carried for years, teaching me it wasn't my fault that love turned toxic. For once I was prioritizing myself. Work was easier now, too. I had better hours, a supportive manager, and I started saving again. Not for anyone else, but for myself. Slowly, life began to feel like a clean slate. Friends I had drifted away from came back, noticing a lighter, freer version of me. One day, someone from Jenna's circle mentioned, casually, "She's really struggling now. You were the best thing in her life." I smiled quietly, feeling no triumph, only relief. I realized the truth. Freedom isn't loud. It isn't about vengeance or drama. It's subtle, steady, and deeply satisfying. I could finally breathe without fear of manipulation or derision. And for the first time in years, I understood that leaving wasn't losing. It was winning on my terms. And as I lay in bed that night, I felt at a peace I hadn't thought possible. Knowing the life I built alone was mine entirely, untouchable and real. 1 year later, I'm living a life I never thought I'd get to. My apartment has grown warmer, filled with small touches I actually love. I wake up to the smell of coffee brewing and the sound of birds outside my window. Not the tension of someone criticizing every corner of my home. I've met someone new, someone who values my family as much as I do, who doesn't see me as a paycheck or a prop. It's calm, it's balanced, and it's real. My mom fully recovered, and I make a point to call her every morning, to tell her I love her, to show her that her sacrifices weren't wasted. I spend weekends helping my sister, laughing with friends, and enjoying life in ways I didn't even know I missed. The scars from my marriage remain, but they don't hurt. They remind me of my strength and my boundaries. I learned how to recognize toxic love, how to step away, and how to never let someone diminish the people I care about or myself. I even saw Jenna once, by accident, at a cafe near my office. She looked tired, bitter, and alone. I didn't approach. I didn't need to. I simply watched, sipping my coffee, realizing that sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't about confrontation. It's about walking away and living the life she can never touch. I built a life filled with love, respect, and peace. Every morning I wake up and choose happiness. I'm free. I'm empowered. And for the first time in decades, I feel like the man I was always meant to be. Because leaving her wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the life I deserved all along.